Welcome back to our Azure Cloud series. In today's episode, we are going to explore Cloud Service Level Agreement, or SLAs. These agreements, before we start with it, these agreements are actually essential because they define the level of service you can expect from your cloud provider, ensuring that both parties, provider as well as the customer, in this case, it can be you as well. So both parties understand their roles and responsibilities. Let's break down what SLAs are, their key components, and the critical metrics that help measure service performance, or KPIs. So let's start with defining SLA. Like, what is SLA? As we already know, it stands for a service level agreement. This is a formal contract between a service provider and a customer that specifies that the performance standards the provider must meet. It ensures transparency between both parties. It also sets clear expectation and also holds both parties accountable. For organizations or businesses, SLAs are crucial because they guarantee that cloud services will support their operations reliably. Now, let's look at the key component of an SLA. The first one is standards, service standards. Now, these are the performance benchmarks that the provider commits to. For example, an SLA might guarantee 99.9% uptime, meaning the service is available and operational 99.9% of the time. It can also define the response time for addressing issues and maximum resolution time for fixing problems. This is where RTO and RPO concept comes in. The next component is responsibilities. This section outlines that both parties, which includes provider as well as customer, are responsible for their instances, for their virtual machines, data storage, and any other services. The provider must ensure system availability and data security. That is also very critical and crucial. While the customer might need to maintain secure access credentials and follow best practices to avoid service disruptions, which means they both have to do their part properly. Imagine if the cloud provider is providing you the best security possible, but then in your organization, your employees are setting up passwords like 1234 or password 1234 QWERTY or some very common passwords. In that case, you are lacking up. So you have to also do your part properly. After responsibilities comes penalties. If the service provider fails to meet the agreed performance levels, the SLA defines the consequences as well. These penalties often come in the form of service credits, a discount applied to your bill, or even contract termination in some severe cases specifically. These penalties actually push, or I will say motivate, providers to maintain high service levels. Otherwise, they will not even care. Now, let's move ahead. Well, before moving ahead, let's actually explore some of the common metrics used in SLA. Why not? The first one is uptime. This refers to the percentage of time the service is operational and available. For example, the previous example, we can take that. 99.9% uptime guarantees it guarantees that the service can be down or unavailable for roughly 8 to 9 hours in the whole year. So that is a downtime. But higher uptime percentage like 99.99%. Yes, there is a big difference between 99.9 and 99.99 because this reduces downtime even further, making the service more reliable. And all this is mentioned in SLA. So that was your uptime. How about response time? Now, this measures how quickly the support team acknowledges and respond to any issue once it is reported. Faster response times mean quicker initial action taken by the provider or maybe your company, which is very crucial for minimizing disruption. For example, some critical services like web servers, they need very minimal response time. If something goes bad, they must come back up as fast as possible. Or, one more example, critical issues might have a guaranteed response time of 15 minutes, let's say. While urgent problems might take up to an hour, right? But they still have to make sure that if it is super critical, 1 hour might be a very long time. A point to actually, I want to make one more point. Remember, if you reduce this response time, remember the solution will also get very expensive. So if you want it to be seconds, it can be done, but then the overall solution will be complex and it tends to get expensive. But some industries need that, especially finance, right? Stock markets. They cannot afford even a minute of downtime in some cases. Next is resolution time, how fast they will fix it. So this is the time taken to fully resolve an issue after it's reported. For example, a provider might guarantee that critical issues will be resolved within 4 to 5 hours, and less critical ones might take 24 hours or maybe like more days. So this resolution time is also a key to ensure that the problems are fixed promptly, minimizing the impact on business operations. Remember, for this to actually happen properly, the provider or the organization not might actually, will definitely categorize the problems or categorize the issues with their severity levels. If the problem is more severe, it should be fixed very fast and as soon as possible. If the issue is not severe at all, yeah, it can take 1 or 2 days to fix, it doesn't matter. So there will be tiering as well. Purpose, right? Now, it ensures transparency, sets expectation, and holds both parties accountable for service quality. So this measures the system's capacity to actually handle the workload and also make sure that everyone know what they are getting into. Everyone means both parties must know a clear boundary, a clear separation of responsibilities, and to what extent they have to actually make sure that the service is performing. Remember, sometimes if there is an issue, the service can actually underperform, but it might be written in the SLA that the service might perform at 60% of its usual performance. So that can also be done. Key metrics in cloud SLA. Now, we already discussed quite a few. We know what uptime guarantee means, response time, resolution time we already discussed, but I wanted to put some more there. Now, the next one is throughput. Let's talk about that as well. So, throughput. This measures the system's capacity to handle workload, ensuring that the performance remains stable even during high peak or certain spikes. For example, A cloud database might guarantee the ability to process a certain number of transactions per second. That will be the throughput, the amount of work done. So even the SLA, they also mention the proper throughput. One more, that is data retention. This refers to how long the provider stores your data and ensures it remains accessible and also it remains accurate. For example, an SLA might specify that the customer data is retained for 7 years with regular backups to prevent data loss. Why I said 7 years? Because in certain industries like banking or telecom industries, the records are sometimes kept for 7 years, where the government agencies or maybe like police, they can actually refer to the old data. So these industries might have to pull the data back from the archives. Imagine if there are no archives. So they will lose a lot of critical data. That is not good. So data retention is also there in the SLA. Support availability means customer support kind of thing, right? So support availability, this defines the availability of technical support. For example, a provider might offer for paying customer 24/7 support for critical issues, ensuring that the help is available at any time. For less urgent problem, support might be limited to business hours, or it might ask you to create a ticket, and then they will return the call after a day or two, or whenever they get the ticket. So, immediate response for critical problems, and for non-critical issues, there might be a long process of raising a ticket, then waiting for your cloud providers to get back, and back and forth. Now, let's discuss two critical metrics for disaster recovery. You will remember this. That is RTO and RPO. Very critical concept. Let's start with RTO. That stands for Recovery Time Objective. This is the maximum acceptable time to restore a service or system after a disruption. For example, in an application, if an application goes down by any cause, intentional or accident, it doesn't matter. If an application goes down or offline, now the provider might guarantee to restore it within 2 or 4, maybe 5 hours. Now, this 5 hours is defining the RTO, recovery time objective. All right. Now, this downtime can lead to lost revenue. And for some industries, 4 hours might be maybe $1 million in potential revenue loss, right? And they cannot afford it. So in that case, they might want to reduce the RTO. But again, if you want to reduce it, be ready to pay more. So there is a sweet balance between how much RTO you can afford. The next is RPO. That stands for Recovery Point Objective. This refers to the maximum, again, acceptable amount of data loss measured in time. For example, an RPO of 1 hour means that the backups are performed every hour. So that is the frequency. So in the event of any failure, intentional or by accident, you might lose up to 1 hour worth of data. That's gone. The shorter the RPO, the less data is lost. So which is vital for businesses that handle sensitive or time critical information or mission critical information. The key difference between the two is their focus. RTO is about how quickly services are restored after a disruption, minimizing downtime. RPO is about how much data can be lost without causing a major disruption, determining how often data backups or replications are performed. To summarize, cloud SLAs are essential because they set a clear expectation for service quality and ensure accountability between providers and customers. The key metrics like uptime, response time, RTO, RPO help maintain business continuity, minimize downtime, and protect valuable data or infrastructure. By understanding these components, you can choose cloud services that align with your organization's need and ensure reliable performance in the long run. So, thank you for tuning in to this episode. See you in the next one, where we'll continue with exploring more essential concepts of Azure Cloud. Take care.